Welcome, dear friends, to Kardec Radio. We are here live from the Spiritist Society of Virginia in a special prayerful meeting in preparation for our 12-hour service tomorrow for the anniversary of the center. And we have here with us friends, our dear Carol Correa, who at this time usually does the God at Home, and decided to join us in this special prayerful meeting. We have Isabella Silvestre. Thank you also, Isabella, for being with us. We have Adriano Ferreira, Barbara Ferreira, who is also here with us. Thank you, Adriano, for joining us. We have Carlos Diaz, whom you probably cannot see. I'm not so sure because he's behind the cameras. And Virginia, who is here. Right, Virginia? Thank you, Virginia. And the good spirits. So for those who are watching us, we're going to do this prayerful meeting also as an opportunity to revisit how simple it is to do a prayerful meeting anywhere, at home, in our in the friends' homes, anywhere, even in your office if you want. Ideally, that's going to happen in a new world, right? So we often begin with a prayer. But observe that we have the jar of water and the cups. Ideally, we put them on and then we distribute at the end. This is also energy medicine that helps us to replenish not only the perispiritual body, but rebalance ourselves, the remedies of the beyond that will be benefiting us, okay? I'd like to ask our dear Carol to start with the initial prayer. Please, Carol.
Beloved Master, we are so thankful for the opportunity to unite our hearts in your beloved presence and beautiful name. We thank you tonight especially for the sacred, spiritual, hospital, school, and center, the Spiritist Society of Virginia, which is turning 12 years thanks to your loving and continuous effort and faith in our dear Vanessa and in each and every one of us. We thank you for the opportunity that you have given us to be a part of this effort in both realms. And we pray so that these vibrations of love descending upon us directly from your loving heart multiply throughout this very lands, reaching to all spirits who are coming here both tonight and tomorrow for this beautiful celebration of life sustained by you. May all of those who are thirsty for compassion find solace in your presence. May all of those who are hungry for understanding find consolation in your loving arms. May all of those who are looking for direction find certainty and safety in your loving presence. And may all of us who are united in your loving name for 12 hours of service tomorrow be reminded that we are children of God, destined to be instruments of light through your kindness, Lord Jesus. And with your loving permission, we begin our prayerful moments tonight. And so
Isabella, do you think you can open for us, please, and read it? Thank you.
From the book Our Daily Bread, Chico Xavier and the Spirit Emmanuel, chapter 88, titled Discipline. If you are enduring discipline, God is treating you as his children. For what child is not disciplined by his father? Paul Hebrews 12:7. Blessed is the spirit who understands the Lord's discipline and accepts it without resistance. However, few individuals manage to understand and bear discipline. At times, a generous reprimand from the Most High, the symbol of unbridled love, reaches the human arena as a sacred and silent warning. Nevertheless, on most occasions, the incarnate mind deflects the salvific prod, immerses itself in the night of rebelliousness, disregards valuable possibilities, and labels as an unbearable misfortune the renewing influence meant to brighten the sad, dark road. When confronted with this regenerative phenomenon, many people opt for a spectacular escape from the difficult situation and defenselessly give into a slow suicide, abandoning themselves to complete indifference toward their destiny. Those who proceed in such a way cannot be treated as children, since they have isolated themselves and have turned away from divine providence by erecting dense walls of darkness between their own heart and their Father's blessings. Those who understand the discipline of the All-Merciful readjust themselves in a new and promising circle of life. Once the inner storm is overcome, they reevaluate opportunities for learning, serving, and constructing, and based on the bitter experiences of yesterday, they apply the benefits of the higher life with an eye on tomorrow. Do not forget that evil cannot correct anyone. When the Lord's discipline reaches you on your path, accept it humbly and know that it's a true message from heaven.
Easy. Who likes discipline? You do, Virginia? Alright, so now we're open for the conversation and the discussion. Okay. But I guess when he's saying the discipline here, he's talking about education, right? He's talking about this educational approach from God into our lives. It reminds me of Andre Lewis in the book Evolution into Worlds, when he talked about discipline coming before spontaneity in nature, in all the kingdoms of nature. So as this brand of newly formed being is generated and then enters the first form of material body, it is pushed to its evolution before that new thing becomes automated. We're talking about viruses, bacteria, and everything else, as Andre Lewis says. The intelligent principle being tutored and guided by the forces, he calls that an educational approach that we are naming discipline. On our end, when it comes to human level, it's about taming what once was so important and nowadays needs to be pushed to another level, which is consciousness. Before it was the animal instinct, which was vital at the animal kingdom. All these instincts of preservation, destruction, the societal relationships, and now at human level, we need to do everything under our own awareness. So be mindful. Everything we're doing we think before we do it. But who does it nowadays? Because we are still living at a time when people are proclaiming the rights. We're living at a time when people are claiming their rights, and versus the need of reasoning their personal rights versus the general good sometimes when we talk about abortion. We don't want to be harsh, but the reality is it's our body, but that body inside our body is not our body. So how can you say you have the right of killing that unborn baby when this unborn baby is not you?
And even our bodies are not ours. They are a concession of God. God is the one that granted us this physical body, as God has granted us many other physical bodies for the other internships that we had on the earth. So we cannot even claim that the body that we are temporarily loaning from God is ours. It is not ours. It's a concession from God. If we read the book Missionaries of the Light, we see that there's a reincarnatory department in the colony of Nosolar, our home, where physical bodies are literally designed with a blueprint from the engineers from above, taking into consideration our educational needs for a particular lifetime. So not even our bodies are ours. So the body that we call ours is actually not ours. It belongs to God. So we have a double responsibility, because we are loaning our own body, and then we are co-creating another loan with God. So we cannot claim that either our bodies or the body of the fetus is ours.
And then it's like the many politicians nowadays are being asked to push these bills regarding the decriminalization of the use of marijuana, and you have several states already being open zones for it. I have friends in other states where it's been approved, and they've been telling how crazy it is that people have their dispensary there, and they can go there not only for medical reasons but recreational reasons. They can go in and out and buy them and use them. And the question for us is, how can we claim for more rights when we haven't yet achieved greater social improvements to secure everybody's rights? You know, when we talk about schools, for example, we're seeing this increase on entitlement of little kids, where teachers are no longer given the respect that they are supposed to receive. Parents who are daily giving their children to others to educate them, having little time actually to educate their children, and the side effects in the relationships, as a pediatrician told us recently, this increase in the entitlement of the children, and teachers having little room to actually educate our children. So this balance of claiming for our rights versus disciplining ourselves to actually receive extra rights. What comes to your mind? I don't know, when you were reading this, Isabella, if anything else came to mind, or something of the nature, Adriano. So important. Discipline is so important. When people ask us, like, how did we do, 12 years is nothing compared to immortality, but how do you, the Mount Vernon Spiritist Center is turning 12 years as well, the Inner Enlightenment Spiritist Society is turning 12 years. how do you achieve it? There is discipline, there is order, and nowadays we see more and more people who are aversive to even the word discipline. As the Dalai Lama says, there is a negative connotation to it in his book about ethics for the new millennium, for the 21st century, and he says there's a negative connotation when we talk about discipline, but he says in this 21st century we need what we call ethical discipline, which is avoid hurting others. And we see people claiming for rights, but the rights to hurt people, rights to kill unborn babies in the bellies of their mothers. I'm so sorry, but how can you go to the streets and ask for a right to kill the most fragile form of life that has no defense whatsoever? It's so insane that it's hard for some people even to see the level of insanity in those claims. And we're not being orthodox here or too religious, but we're talking about the use of reasoning, and that's what we're seeing where Spiritism can really come and give us a new opportunity to revisit those things.
And it's so important to practice compassion and empathy. What if it were us trying to reincarnate? Only God knows how long we have spent in the spiritual realm studying, preparing ourselves, and then all the cards are right, because it's like playing a chess game, right, Vanessa? You always remind us of that. It's not just us reincarnating, it's the spirits with whom we need to readjust ourselves also reincarnating. Imagine if we are there waiting for that perfect divine moment and then the door is shut. We are not only hurting our own selves, but we're hurting all the network of spirits who are connected to us and depend upon us doing our part.
That's a good reminder. Isabel, since you open it, you don't want to say anything yet. Okay. Adriano.
I guess discipline is good for health, right? We are like living a crisis of health in all realms, physical, mental, psychological, all that, and this psychology of today, they talk about self-regulations, in which we have to regulate ourselves, even sometimes so little things, correcting our grammar, or saying better words, improve our self-esteem. We're so crazy that it has no self-esteem or depression, but discipline is good all for that. If we like self-regulate ourselves, like as they say, something even very small things can improve, self-esteem. Imagine greater things like more shoes, more deeper. So we are preventing a lot of health issues for us, mental, psychological, and then we acquire what we are crazy for, which is peace, which is, harmony. We complain about a lot of expenses in medical field, the health insurance, psychology, and this and that, but we are not doing anything to prevent to go to the doctors, right? If we had a little more discipline in everything in life, we'd be spending less and less money on all those things. Plus our spiritual side will be even better, and our family will be more in harmony and everything. But we're so focused on the negative side of everything. We think that, as you said, we're entitled to choose what we want, but we always complain about the consequences, right? if we stop a little and take a look at the great things out of the discipline, take this prejudice against discipline, right? And then we're gonna see it in a different eye and see it's so good to have it in many ways of our life. You know, could be a reading 1 page a day is a discipline, right? Stop doing like reading a bad page and turn to read a good one, or organ with very little things. That's something that we can start. And it brings a lot of good things if there is proof and there is, like, you know, good consequences for that. I guess that's something I try to do too.
That's reminded me of Chico Xavier when we were recently in Brazil, and we spent like 1 week with Geraldo Lemos Neto and friends and doing some research in Pedro Leopoldo. It's amazing how Chico Xavier came from a tiny, back then it was like a village, tiny, and how he was so disciplined under the conditions he was put under, how he made his way to fulfilling a legacy that is giving us life to date, from a tiny town, and having only the 4th grade, and he was able to bring to us a treasure that is yet to be understood and discovered to date. Like this message that can, as Adriano said, if we read 1 page a day, it changes our neurochemistry. It changes the way we feel, it changes the way we understand things. It can create, if we say physically speaking, new synapses. New synapses will boost us into new behavior, different attitude, like trim in our character, and thus a new a purification of ourselves. In the Spirit's book by Kardec, he mentions to us that the main goal of reincarnation is to purify ourselves. Purification means to get out of this selfishness, this egotistic mode. So Chico Xavier talked to everybody. He never turned anybody down. He was true to the core of himself. I've never heard anybody say any story that they were disappointed with Chico Xavier. Have you ever heard? I've never heard. I've heard of other people, but not Chico Xavier. Every day you find a pearl that he left somewhere. He was always giving, never demanding. He was always embracing people, but under how could he possibly have done it without discipline? So the secret is discipline. We're talking about the next opportunity for us to do anything good. Many people, all of us, have great ideas. I don't know anybody who tells me, I've never had a great idea. Even children, they have great ideas. And I say even children because they are developing. And they have a lot yet to bloom. But right from the get-go, great ideas, right, Virginia? Your dreams. And then we think, how do we go from dreaming, having good ideas, to actually doing it? Discipline. If we discipline ourselves, few individuals manage to understand and be disciplined. Understand because the spirits are saying, you're dreaming of opening a hospital in Africa for people. But God is saying, I don't want you to go to Africa. I want you to stay in the United States and help people who are undergoing mental health issues and cannot go to the hospital because they have to take care of their daily lives. So I want you to stay here. But we don't understand. We're still dreaming of a day, one day, that the resources will happen somewhere else. But God is saying, I want you to bloom where you are. So that's where we needed to understand that discipline. Imagine if the intelligent principle could have consciousness. Say, I don't want to be in this body of a virus. It's not going to work, because that's why consciousness doesn't happen until we're humans, where we have 10,000 possibilities, and yet we're not satisfied, as Adriana is saying. We're always dreaming about the next great thing elsewhere with other people, and we don't appreciate the people that are with us. And that's where the understanding of the discipline comes. And he talks about God, the Most High, right? Reprimanding us generously. That's interesting when he uses that expression. At times, a generous reprimand from the Most High reaches the human arena as a sacred and silent warning. It's interesting because it says a generous reprimand. I've never heard of that expression, because usually we think when we are somebody calls our attention or limits our actions, we are upset. But he's saying God does it with generosity in a way to tell us to work at another field of action where we are. We're deeply rooted where we are, but we branch out and can create shade and give food to the passers-by. So for us, it's really a way to understand and bear that discipline. Imagine Jesus, who knows that 10,000 technology that happens in this cosmic possibility where he is. He incarnates in the human form on earth, and no shoes, no cars, no internet, no anything. Is he upset? No. Is he complaining? No. There's not even 7-Eleven. Imagine. Traveling, not even a convenience store, nothing. And when the disciples come and bring fruits and nuts, after a long trip, he says, I'm fine. How come? They say, because there's another form of nourishing ourselves that you're yet to know. So many things we don't know. He's teaching us to bear that discipline. God told him, go there, bear the discipline of this moment, but teach them the way. Show them the way. Thank God he did it, because if we didn't have that model, how would we be here today? We wouldn't, because we would still be feeling as if we are the outliers of society. Because we're not the rich, because we're not the most everything, the most wanted of all, say. And then we would still feel like people in the past, like Bartholomew. Oh my gosh, life is so sad. It is not. And then comes Chico Xavier to remind us that when Jesus followed through, if we follow his steps and bear that discipline, it doesn't matter what the world thinks. If we fulfill our duties, we're gonna sleep well, and we're gonna continue our path, in spite of everybody thinking we're crazy, we're this and that, because they thought about that regarding Jesus, Chico Xavier. It's so beautiful to talk about Chico Xavier today. And if we were in his scheme, many people loved him, but many other people thought he was not the greatest. It was crazy, it was weird, it was strange, it was a little different. And that's exactly what Jesus prophesies. Like, it's gonna happen to everybody who walks the path, and it's gonna be like that for quite a while. So he says, to those who understand the discipline of the All-Merciful, readjust themselves in a new, and now this is beautiful, promising circle. I think it's what Adriana was saying, like, we can avoid a lot of trouble and maximize the gains if we discipline ourselves. Of course, we talk about eating and exercising and emotional discipline, practicing silence. And that's why he talks about the inner storm that we need to overcome, that can only happen if and only if we have discipline. Daily, we have people who talk about suicide, who talk about the possibility of being homeless, of being without a family. And at the end of the day, we ask, how can we discipline ourselves a little more emotionally, spiritually, to maximize the gains in our lives, especially vibratory gain? Because if I avoid thinking of the negative, I will maximize my connections with the higher planes, through which I will replenish myself, renew myself, and by doing so, I will be more grateful to these generous reprimands of God that happen sometimes, quite often. If we see kids when they're growing up, the number of no's increases, they grow. We say no, 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 because the freer we go, the more knows to guide their lives in order to gain their self-discipline, and no longer the no's come from outside, but they are ready from within, like Chico Xavier. He got it, he did it, he didn't postpone it. Thank God, because if he had done it, we probably wouldn't be here. Adrian, you're smiling. You want to make another comment that came to your mind? Go ahead, please.
No.
You sure? No?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Go.
I could say something as we were looking at the message. Emmanuel also says that discipline coming from a generous reprimand is also a sign of God's unbridled love for us. Often we, in our narrow-mindedness, because we are still on earth and are still progressing and learning about ourselves, we see reprimands as punishments. But Emmanuel helps us to re-signify that, to look at that situation from a different angle, and proposes that we read this situation differently as a sign of God's unconditional love for us. So if God puts a stop sign in the middle of the road, it's not because God doesn't want us to continue. It's because God is helping us to recalculate our GPS for a better destination. It's not a punishment. It's in fact training for better opportunities in the eyes of the Eternal Father, because God looks at all of us as eternal spirits, and God sees us not only as we are now, but as eternal results of His love. So she can measure where we are and where we need to go much better than we can ourselves. And also Emmanuel told Chico Xavier himself when they started their partnership. Chico asked, "What shall I do to be useful?" And Emmanuel said, "You only have to follow 3 recommendations." And Chico then said, "What are they?" And Emmanuel said, "Number 1, discipline. What's number 2? Discipline. What's number 3? Discipline." So we learn from the educator Emmanuel that discipline is really a gift that we shall embrace rather than push away.
For those who are watching us, we would like, as the mentors are saying, to remind you, if you are watching and where you are there is no group, it's about you to start a group. And it takes only discipline, nothing else, to start it. It takes less minutes for ourselves and more minutes for others. And that's all it takes. The discipline of sitting down, opening a message, reading, talking about it. Nobody has the truth, because only God has the truth. It's not about having the truth, but sharing. Sharing, and everyone who is connected to us is benefiting from it. And that's it. We don't need to worry about anything else with the internet. Even if you don't have anybody else where you are, you can start it in your home with a God at Home meeting, using your Facebook page, your Instagram, your Twitter, your any social media that is available nowadays, free of charge, for us to stream moments of peace. You can start it, you can do it, and you don't need anybody's permission but God's. And why you? Because you're a child of God, just like everybody else. So it doesn't take another thing but discipline. The discipline of using our 24 hours, a little more daily, dedicated to the benefit of others. Less thinking of ourselves. And there is no ideal day, time, but the very moment when we think now. And why now? The question is, why not now? It takes discipline. For us, the continuation of any work of the good requires discipline. Anything else, if you say, when will I not be in need of discipline? When it's not the good. Because the good is order. If you open the book Action and Reaction by Andrea Lewis, we're gonna see in the 2nd chapter, he learns from the superior spirits at the time that the foundation of charity is order, and order is directly correlated with discipline. Anything else doesn't require. If you need a party, you don't need much discipline. You just go with the flow. When we needed to enhance our skills to another level, we needed to focus, to understand that the time that is given to us is not ours either. The vitality of our physical body is not ours either. And anything else, even our intelligence, is not ours. What is ours? Just the freedom to choose what to do next. That's the only thing we choose, because we're co-creators. The mode of life is God's. So there is no thing of, I'm going to use my time for free to help others. Well, God doesn't charge you for the time you're granted, so do it. And of course, you need to work for material life, but what can you do in your free time but to share the good that is good for you in any way and form? It could be art, it could be music, and that's why We can even sing at the end. Isabella could sing or lead the singing moment for us, Isabella. Do you mind, Isabella? Thank you. So any song that you feel like that could be a song for the wrap up of this prayerful music. What is that?
Heart.
The heart. Are you on?
Heart.
This is spoke of art.
The heart of art.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. You wanna show it? Okay, Regina, thank you. We're ready for it.
Oh, Father of my soul, breath of my breath, taking me through death after death. Oh, may I be a vessel for your light, as I sail through the night. In you I rise and fall, pulsing with your call, ever dying into you and love, like angels into endless skies. Oh, guide me on, guide me free. Oh, guide me on, guide me into thee. Oh, Mother of my soul, cradle of my every birth, oh, green heartbeat of my earth. Oh, may I make room for your embrace. I waken to you in every place. In you I rise and fall, pulsing with your call, ever dying into you and love, like clouds into endless skies. Oh, guide me on, guide me free. Oh, guide me on, guide me into thee. Oh, guide me on, guide me free. Oh, guide me on, guide me into thee.
So we thank God for this opportunity of reflection and the guidance of the Spirit Mentors of the Spirit Side of Virginia and our protecting spirits for opening this message. May we be disciplined enough to allow your guidance to fulfill God's will on earth as it is in heaven. And so be it. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Adriana. Thank you, Isabella, Carlos, Virginia. Thank you, friends. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. we'll be here at the Spirit Side of Virginia, 12 hours of service, and we'll be broadcasting to you at Kardec Radio as well. So join us. Thank you, friends.